Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of the CRA Mondays. Today we have with us Jordan Maris from OSI, who will be speaking about from close room to open dialogue, how to participate in CRA vertical standards. So, Jordan, over to you.
Okay, I will share my screen again and we will get going. Okay, let me know if you guys have any issues seeing what's on screen, but it should be just fine. All good?
Perfect, thank you.
I'm now realizing that I've lifted these slides from another presentation and I haven't looked at the animations, so this might be quite interesting. Let's see how it goes. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world, I guess. My name's Jordan. I am a former lawmaker who worked on the CRA. I wrote some of the amendments which ended up becoming the open source software stewards and the open source exemptions in the law. So I quit that and I've joined, over the last year, I've been working with the OSI as a policy analyst here in Brussels, in rainy Brussels. I'm also participating through the OSI to ETSI and Sensenlec, which isn't the favorite part of my job, but that's part of the mission. Standardization isn't always easy. And I'm also participating in a commission-funded dissemination activities around the work on the CRA, which basically means that I'm coming here to tell people how they can get involved and what they can do. I'm going to keep the presentation as brief as I reasonably can, but there are three main things that I want to talk to you about today. The first thing is the CRA is different to the laws that have come before it. So basically, it's something completely new, and the standards for it can't be written in the same way that standards were written in the past. Point number two is that the current process for making standards is broken. So the way that standards are made today is really incompatible with open source participation. And the final thing, the good news, is that we actually have some solutions to propose to you today. And then the rest of the session, I really want to dedicate it to talking about those, to answering your questions and stuff like that. So yeah, the CRA is different. And let's talk a little bit about why. Well, first of all, and most importantly, it applies to software. Now, there are already some laws that apply to software, but there are relatively few in the European Union overall, and it's always been to very specific subsections of software. The CRA is the first bill that really applies to a very wide range of software. The problem with that is that 90% of the world's software actually contains open source code, and that basically means that if you want to make a law, that law is going to affect the people who write that code, right? So we need to ensure that open source developers are actually involved in the process. Thankfully, the European Commission agrees. So into the law, they put this concept of open source software stewards. And most importantly, when the standardization process for the CRA began, for the very first time ever, they stipulated that the open source community has to be consulted. I want to stress that this is the very first time this has happened ever. And it's really, really important that we make sure it's not the last. So the success of these standards, or at least of open source participation in the making of these standards, is really important if we ever want to have this kind of impact again. And personally, I don't think that regulation of the digital sphere is going to stop. So being able to continue to have an impact there is really important. And so hopefully changing the system for the better as well, right? Let's talk a bit about the process. So as I've already said, the process is really broken. So to understand why it's broken, we have to take a look at how the standardization process actually works in the first place and how it's worked essentially for the last 60 years. Essentially, well, perhaps not for the last 60 years, but in any case, for the last 3 or 4 decades. Essentially, the EU is going to make laws, right? So they're going to propose a law, and then these European standardization organizations are responsible for making a standard. I'm not sure if you guys can see my cursor, so I am wiggling it around, but if you can't, I'm sorry. Now, in order for that to work, these European standardization organizations need members with expertise. So you can see that industry over here on the left is participating in some cases with money, and in some cases with expertise, and in many cases with both, in these standardization organizations. So what does the industry get out of it? Well, traditionally they get influence. They get to decide how the standards that impact them are made, and usually tweak them to be more beneficial or more implementable for them. They get the standards themselves, which make it easier for them to produce goods, which make goods in some cases interoperable. And in the case of ETSI, they also get patent inclusion. So essentially, the industry can influence the standards in such a way that a patented technology gets included, which they own the patent rights to. So this is how it's traditionally worked up until now. I'll also add that it's not always patent inclusion. For other people, the focus is really on the influence. So patent inclusion is more an ETSI thing. The influence is more a Semlec thing. It's just about fitting things together in a way that makes essentially more money for the companies who are participating. Now, basically, yeah, that depends on, number one, the industry having a monopoly on the expertise. So like traditionally, you know, if you're making a standard about, I don't know, household appliances, you're going to need the people who make household appliances because they're the ones with the expertise to do it, right? And there is a monopoly on the expertise because they are all working in that industry. The second thing is that the industry have to have the money to send people full-time to participate and to pay potential membership fees in these organizations. Now, this has traditionally been the case because for the industry, the payoff of, well, okay, we have to spend some money and send a person full-time to do this work, but you know, then we get to influence the process. We have more control. That's been like a good deal for industry up until now. So the third point, and this is more of a rare issue, is the fact that the ESOs having members with this expertise at all. So this process only works if there are members of these standardization organizations with the expertise required to do the work, right? Because if not, the commission aren't going to come to them and ask them to write a standard if they don't have anyone who can. And finally, the ESOs need to be able to produce quality standards. That is obviously very much dependent on the last things, but it's very important. So the question is, what happens when the person you need to consult is not industry, but the open source community? Well, the whole system immediately breaks down. So first of all, there's no longer an industry monopoly on expertise, right? You know, open source is made by a wide range of people, in many cases that are not included in traditional industry. So suddenly, the industry themselves don't have the expertise to do it. Second point, okay. The industry have traditionally had the money and resources to send people full-time to work on this. The open source community does not have the money and resources to send people to work full-time in standards, or at least they have less of it. Third point, the ESOs do not have membership with the expertise required because they don't have much membership from the open source community. So OSI is a member, LF are an associate and are becoming a member at ETSI, Eclipse Foundation have become a member recently at ETSI, but there are not that many open source actors, especially from the wider community. You know, also obviously Red Hat and Mozilla are present, but we don't have that many people. And so all of this impacts on the final thing, ESOs being able to produce a quality standard. And as it stands, we're not sure that they're going to be able to without us. Just a quick check, am I audible to the room, and can you see the slides? Could somebody just speak up if that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great, sorry. All right, so what does this mean in practice? Well, it has some consequences when the open source community are trying to participate. First things first, as I mentioned before, there's a risk that standards are either going to be patent encumbered or hidden behind paywalls. That's more a risk for us when it comes to implementation, because we can't implement as open source standards which are patent encumbered or paywalled. The second problem is pay to play. So up until now, basically, if you want to participate in standardization, you have to find the money to pay the membership fees to join your national standardization body or to join ETSI. And it's it's not nothing. OSI's managed to find the money to do this work, but not everybody can, especially if you're an independent developer who hasn't got somebody to host them and somebody to send them. Let alone the fact that, of course, you're going to be expected to participate in these meetings, which can sometimes last a whole day. That brings us on to point number 3, which is the synchronous meetings. So these meetings were designed for a time when participants from industry would come for a whole day, sit and discuss things over coffee until they worked something out. Now, that works when you're paying someone full-time to do the work, but it doesn't work when you're trying to do the standards work as well as develop your product, or if it's simply just something that you're doing on the side of a job. The 4th challenge is a lack of trust. So within the standardization world, a lot of the trust is based on the relationships that they've already established, right? So, as the guy from Bosch, the guy from Philips, who's across the table for you and also participating in the process. So when he's put in charge of making the standard on, I don't know, kitchen products, you know more or less what you're getting yourself in for, and you know that you can probably more or less trust them. Open source participants are completely new to this world, and hence there is a complete lack of trust between existing members and us, and that leads to the opinions of the community not being considered as much as they should be. There's also the issue of conflicting interests. The participation of the open source community is one of the biggest changes to the system in recent years, even if it's just for the CRA. And hence there's a big fear that it could change the process in the long term, which is honestly something I'd very much like to see. There's also the point of conflicting interests within the standards. So, there have been cases where the open source community has been discussing the standards and has said, look, this is going to be impossible for us to implement, or look, you need us to, you can't do it this way because this won't work for the open source community, and that's 90% of your dependencies. So we've said these things, and essentially, because these realities are difficult for some of these industry organizations, we've not necessarily been listened to like we should have. The next thing is the process is very closely guarded, right? And it's a closed process by nature. Up until now, it's extremely rare to see public consultations about standards that are in development. And so we're really trying to get out of that. And I mean, even with the standards in public even with the standards publicly available for comment, commenters are not allowed to submit proposals for changes due to the strict IPR policies of these standardization organizations. So the process is very much a closed process and a difficult one to get involved in. The final thing is the participation of the existing membership of these organizations, right? It is subject to it actually being beneficial to them. So members of ETSI and Sansanalek will only participate in the creation of standards which have some sort of benefit to them. And a big question that's kind of coming up, and I suspect we might hear more about it in the close future as well, how can we guarantee that these members are going to participate in the standard creation? So the good news is we have answers and solutions to some of these problems. The first thing we can offer is for people from the community to come and participate through the OSI. So the OSI has, although it pains us, been a member of ETSI for some time now, and really has managed to sort of break through in recent times. And as a result, we're a member of ETSI, and we've struck a deal with them which allows us to bring interested parties into the standardization process through the OSI. So you will be accredited by the OSI to participate on our behalf. You can contact either myself or Simon Phipps to do this. So email addresses are on screen, and I'm sure I can share them with you afterwards if needed. This gives you a couple of pros that you cannot get through other means. So first of all, you get full access to ETSI. You can join all the meetings. You get access to the documents that are internal. You can be added to the mailing lists and so on and so forth. So it really gives you sort of the full access you need. Now, it is also possible with a certain delay for you to go to Sansanalek and Sen as well and participate in the meetings there should you want to do that. Now, the only con we have is obviously, if you choose this pathway, it can be much more time consuming than the alternatives. Obviously, you're not compelled to do anything, but in order to have an impact in the process, it means coming to meetings essentially. And those meetings are still way too synchronous, which is something that we're hoping to fix in the future. But yeah, that's the first route, and we'll be really happy to help you if you want to come through that route and join and participate. The second thing is some upcoming deep dive sessions which we've got planned. Each rapporteur of the vertical standards on the CRA is going to organize or will take part in a deep dive session. It's expected to be between 1.5 and 2 hours. And the dates are not yet confirmed, but essentially that means you in an online room with the rapporteur for up to 2 hours, I think, to discuss the details of the standards, proposed modifications, and sort of walk through it, look at any issues that might arise and flag those issues directly with the rapporteur. And I know that like a lot of the rapporteurs actually amazingly are from the open source community, so they're like really great people, really nice to work with. So that's a possibility that's coming up in the future. This is also, as you can probably see, there's now a co-funded by EFTA and co-funded by the European Union logo displaying at the bottom of this page. So these deep dive sessions are funded by an EU grant, the same grant that I'm working on for full transparency. So it's the Stand for CRA grant system, and you can find out more about it at standforcra.eu. I will again send the links after the session. The final way, which is kind of the way I really want to quickly show you guys today, is to participate through the public participation platform. Now, this is a platform that ETSI has set up for the purpose of collecting feedback from the open source community. It's something that OSI and others have been pushing for like a very long time. It's built on GitLab, which means it should be familiar to most of us, and you can open issues regarding the standards. So I'm just going to demo and take you there straight away in the hope that it works. So it's labs.etsy.org. And if you go there, you should be able to find the Stand for CRA groups. I'll walk you through it. You go to groups, you go to explore groups, you go to Stand for CRA, and you can then see all of the available standards. Oh, am I logged in? Excuse me, I'm logged in as myself, and I need to not be logged in. So I'm now logged in as a normal account, not my own Etsy online account, which gives me access to other repositories. Sorry. So yeah, then you can see all of the standards which are available for comment. I mean, you guys already probably know how GitLab works, but essentially, yeah, you've got your page, you've got these documents, which are the standards. You can open them, consult, read through, and open issues over here. So you can see that some people have already opened issues, which is great news. Just a couple of points worth raising. Nothing that should be too new. Please use the commenting template, which we've already made available. And please add a tag if you can. Okay, it's not possible right now, but it will be. Please add a tag to pick the specific kind of comment that you're making, just for the purposes of sorting. I'll make sure that that's made available by the end of this day. But yeah, once you've done that, the rapporteur will be able to take a look at the issues and hopefully get back to you with comments or more information. Just as a heads up, the issue tracker does by default lock new issues. This is a decision by ETSI, not by us, but we're hoping that we'll be able to get it changed in the future so that people can comment on issues and so we don't end up with lots of copies of the same things. But yeah, this is a platform that you can use then to participate in the standards. Quite a few of them are already available. So you've got password managers, antivirus, VPNs, network management systems, boot managers, PKI, network interfaces, operating systems, routers, modems, and switches, virtualization containers and hypervisors, and smart appliances. So there's quite a wide range of standards already available for us to take a look at and for people to comment on. There are a couple more which are not yet available, but it is in the works, and the plan is that all of the standards will be made available for comment in the coming weeks and month. I think, yeah, one last point, which I already emphasized earlier, the ability of our community to influence these standards in the future and to influence other standards in the future really depends on the success of the CRA. So If you know people who'd be interested in participating, either through the platform or through OSI, always feel free to reach out to us. We really want to make this work so that we can make it work again in the future. I guess now we can move to a Q&A or discussion. I'm going to switch back to the Zoom tab, and then I'm going to shut off my screen sharing.
Jordan, great presentation. Thank you for giving it. I'm curious on the OSI side of things. Do you have to be a member of OSI to participate in those discussions through OSI?
So we'd have to check with Simon to be sure, but I do believe there is some flexibility in that matter. So yeah, if you're interested, contact us, and we can try and work out a way to make it work. Simon was supposed to be in this call, but I don't think he's been able to make it. I think he's been caught up with something else. So reach out. In any case, we'll do everything we can to. Oh, he is here. Simon, can we certify people who are not OSI members or OSI affiliates?
Broadly, we need to explain to ETSI that the people who we are endorsing are open source community members. And the easiest way of doing that is to point to the affiliate that they are a part of. When the organization that you're representing is not an affiliate, then we have to explain it to ETSI on a case-by-case basis. So it's a lot easier if you are part of an affiliate. And generally, you need to advise ETSI of your community-connected email address and not your corporate or employer's email address. The reason for this is because ETSI does not want to give people a free pass to getting the benefits of membership just because they're working on open source. So I go to quite some lengths to help them have confidence that the people they're getting are genuine open source contributors and not sneaky transnational corporate employees coming in through the back door.
Simon summed it up perfectly, so that's great. I saw another hand, but it's disappeared since. Dan, was that you?
It was me, and you'll forgive my lack of scope knowledge on the CRA itself, but you made mention of other sections that will be coming. Is there a concise list of what those other sections might be?
You are putting me on the spot here. I can find and send you the full list. I don't have it to hand, but there are, like, for example, SEAM is one of the ones that's missing. So System and Information and Event Management, which should be coming as well. I'm trying to think of ones off the top of my head, which I can't see yet. Did I say smart homes? There are a few standards, antivirus as well. There are a few that are not quite there yet, and so they've not been made publicly available. But
oh, dude, I don't need to put you on the spot. I'm more than happy to receive a list when you have it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's also worth noting that in the future, the Commission will most likely request further vertical standards for specific areas. So the Commission have already expressed that in the future, they have a plan to potentially ask for more vertical standards for the purposes of basically making compliance easier. So there is a current working list of vertical standards, of which there are a few missing. And soon they should be up as well. And there may also be future standardization requests by the Commission for further verticals.
Okay. So all this is under EN 304, but I don't see a link to the EU's. I see that there's a legislative, the European Lex, but I'm trying to find the source of all this. Do you happen to have a link to the actual CRA itself?
Of the law, yeah, of course. So if you search EURLEX, so EURLEX, and then Cyber Resilience Act, it should be like the first result that you see. I'm actually just going to drop it in the chat now. Here you go. And that gives you, so you can also get it in other languages if you like, though, I guess, yeah. it's not particularly always useful, but there you have the full text with the recitals and the text. Now, this does not contain the standardization request itself. That's a separate thing, and I don't even know if it contains. I think it's the high risk categories which are considered. Let me find out. Okay, yeah, here you go. So it's in Annex 3. I should know that by now. You have a full list of the things which are being standardized. Note that some of these have been merged into others, though. So this was the initial list. The standards may merge some of them together, and some of them might not have vertical standards done for them. But I think the majority will. So, for example, there are ones on smart home and smart home products that I think that they're being merged together or worked on at least in the same space. So yeah, hopefully what we'll see soon is that all of those standards will be made publicly available. Not guaranteed, but it's very likely that all of them will be made available to review it.
Thank you. That helps. Are the verticals actually spelled out in 304, or are they derived somehow?
So the verticals, if you go to the page I just sent you to and go to Annex 3, that gives you a list of basically important products with digital elements. And there's also critical products with digital elements. So those two are the lists. So Annex 3 and Annex 4 contain the list of things that are hypothetically could be standardized as verticals. Well, as part of the current standardization request. But as I said, I'm not sure there will be a vertical standard for all of them. I can find you an official document containing a full list of vertical standards. I don't know if I have to hand like an official document, perhaps a standardization request, but I don't think that's public, or if it is, I need to find it.
Okay, this is a very good start. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Alistair, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so we had this conversation last week a little bit about, and in the panel discussion, and I talked to the ETSI guy afterwards about the fact that the ESOs at the moment can't refer normatively to other international standards or organizations like the IETF, for instance, which of course seems very silly, and we did talk about this collectively afterwards. Is there a plan to go after this other than going after the 1025 comments thing? Are we trying to fix this before that because we were told it was a bad idea to wait that long because it might take longer than the heat death of the universe or something?
So the problem is that the approach to standardization in the EU is fixed by law. And so it's very, very challenging to get that changed before the revision of 1025. If there are ways to do it less officially, that would be great, but I'm not so sure. But also that we have to bear in mind also the current situation essentially with paywall standards and EU law, and basically the consensus of the courts in the EU was that if a standard, if you have to pay your way to get to a standard which is required for compliance with the law, then that's a problem. And hence, I think that there's a reluctance now, at least there's a pushback against including essentially paywalled or patent encumbered, perhaps not patent encumbered, but at very least paywalled standards. And those are things we definitely need to push for in the 1025 reform. I 100% agree with you there. On other standardization organizations, particularly other more open-minded ones around the world, I definitely think there's something that needs to be done. The issue remains that, as I said, we're sort of stuck in the current legal framework until the Commission can come up with something new, and hence, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do anything to get around that.
And what is the standard of the position of ECMA? As Simon pointed out, it has the E at the beginning, but is it still not viewed as a European standard? I mean, what's the official position of ECMA?
So the commission don't. The commission have a list of ESOs which is fixed by law. It would make a lot of sense if they were to recognise potentially other ones. It would make at very least sense if they would allow for them to be cited in European standards. That's very important. But to be very, very frank with you, I'm not sure where the commission stand internally on that. I hope that they will think progressively about it, because yeah, we do need more inclusion in that process.
But you're sort of saying that there's nothing that we as a community members can do other than wait for the 1025 thing to roll its course.
I mean, the issue will be that, like, you know, it is literally the legal framework, and until the commission change it, we're sort of stuck with the system that we have. And I think, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the legal framework sets out limits as to which ESOs can participate and which standards get recognized. Now, I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that that's the current case, and hence, like, you know, until that changes, we're stuck with what we've got, unfortunately.
Is there a date for when that law would change? I mean, could it be approved before the CRA fully? I mean, do they have a delayed fuse on 1025, or can they just put it into law and it gets done immediately? Because
so usually there is going to be a delay, and even if they were to publish the proposal from the commission tomorrow, I don't think it would be done in time for the standardization work on the CRA. So as I see it, we're stuck with the system we have now. Whether there's some room within the commission for flexibility or let's say smart thinking, that's one question. But the law itself, it's going to take a while to get it changed. I see Simon's raised his hand. It could be for like additional details. So I'm going to leave the floor to him and then on to Anne.
Thank you very much. Yes. So the list of European standards organizations is in Annex 1 of Regulation 1025. And so that's where the change would be made to add additional ones. I have not seen any indication that that is one of the things that is on the menu at the moment. And then 1025 is in the legislative agenda. Last time I saw, it was supposed to have run its course by the end of 2026, by which time the CRA standards ought to be cooked, or if they're not, there is a problem. So I don't think that that's something that's going to be viable at the moment. But I do think that ECMA are very interested indeed in being cited in European legislation. And I'm sure that that will be something that the part of the Commission looking at 1025 will consider.
So, may I?
Well, so Simon, you're suggesting that if we provided feedback from the communities about why wouldn't, as opposed to getting on the barricades or anything, that might be a useful thing to do, to clap politely from the sidelines?
I do think that when, Jordan, I don't know if you can remind me when the 1025 current round of feedback has to be in. I think it's around about now. But it would be worth commenting.
Yeah.
If you are so motivated to go through all the hoops, it would be worth commenting that standardization happens for the global software community in venues other than the current ESOs, and that the Commission should consider including them as sources. But you do have to be aware that the reason that ECMA hasn't been included is because it almost certainly doesn't have the necessary mechanics inside its standardization process to pass the Commission's bar as a part of the legislative process. So it's likely that if they were included, they agreed to change as well. And what I'm expecting to happen with 1025 is for there to be some changes that are about making publicly available specifications into harmonized standards, rather than making every standards body in the world be part of the ESO process.
I can just add a couple of things. So I've pasted in the chat the current ongoing public consultation for the revision of 1025. They are slating a draft of a new law to be available for Q2 2026. So it is probably not going to be very useful for the standardization on the CRA. One thing that I also wanted to add is, yeah, theoretically, so Simon has made it clear as well, he said it clearly that ECMA probably wouldn't qualify to be an ESO, although the list of ESOs is in a delegated act and it would be possible to do that faster. Whether it would be possible to do it fast enough, so basically there's a rule, the delegated act is proposed and if no one opposes it, it automatically becomes law. But I'm not entirely certain if that could be done within like the next 6 months, for example. I mean, and that would be if we started tomorrow, which the Commission is not convinced they should. So I don't see it as a pathway for the CR to solving the problem in the CRA, but perhaps in the future. Does that satisfy your question, Alistair?
Yes, because I assume that the CRA at the moment is or the process for standard setting is done and there's nothing we can do about it. I am interested in making sure we don't have to go through this kabuki theater in the future. So if there was anything we could do to get this going in parallel to at least provide some mechanism of referential sanity to other things, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I strongly agree with you there. Like we really need to improve this for next time round because this has been an extremely difficult process so far, and we're not even done. Aki.
Hello. Hi. I am a rapporteur for one of those vertical standards. Guess which one based on my chat replies. And so I have had, I just lost some video. I have had a good bit of experience sort of dancing this dance. And I will say this about normative references in these standards. There are definitely vertical standards that are going to normatively reference very expensive ISO standards that one has to purchase in order to get access in order to be conformant. If I understand correctly, there's some stuff moving through the courts right now that's challenging that, but it's kind of beyond my knowledge. But also as a rapporteur, I have chosen to find other authoritative resources to normatively reference, and there's still going to be a lot of people who review my standard, and there's going to be a lot of people who tell me there's things I can't do, but thus far, no one has told me I can't do that. If we look at sort of the ISO directive, which a lot of these standards orgs sort of base their own directives on, ISO's directive says that a technical committee can normatively reference like fora and consortia as long as they are considered like the authority on the matter. So the W3Cs of the world, right, who weren't really like technically a standards body until like very, very recently, have been possible to reference in a lot of ISO standards because of that sort of authority. So I'm really hoping that these harmonized standards also sort of subscribe to that policy. They may not. I may end up just normatively referencing no one because I'm not going to normatively reference someone you have to pay for. But for now, nobody has stopped me.
You really hit the problem on the head though there, Aki. Like, all of the expertise for a lot of these topics is in the open source community, is in organizations which are not recognized as standardization organizations, which are not big industrial players. And like, we're really lucky, really privileged to have, rapporteurs from the open source community who are able to do this really difficult work. But and I really sincerely hope that you will be able to cite those people. So yeah, that's really where we're at on that. Any other questions?
I do have one. Is it not in the best interests of the organizations that are the owners of these closed standards to participate with this process, because otherwise it's going to create a divergence or conflict between what's being done in the open and what they do if they don't participate?
So that's also a very, very good question. And the real question that's hidden behind that is what is actually the interests of the ESOs, right? For the purposes of their appearance in front of the European Commission, it is in their interest to participate. But the things that make them write the standards in the first place are not, it's not so much of a concern as it would be for other types of standards. And hence, I think that we're seeing perhaps a little lesser interest because of that. So, Simon, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, but yeah, as I see it, they have reasons why they should want to do it, but there are also many reasons why they're not that interested. And hence, I think that's also part of the challenge of these standards, right? And you would expect as well that listening to the open source community would be a priority because they know about the reliance on open source within their supply chain. It's unfortunately not what we've seen, or at least not as much as I would like for us to have seen. So yeah, my understanding of the reasons why they do what they do is I think as limited as yours in this case.
Yeah, because there does seem to be this implied feedback, right? Where industry is creating things that are implementing standards or compliant with standards that are using open source software that they contribute to that implement those standards in some ways. And then there's the sort of broken line between that open source development and the standard body. Okay, I think I've made my question clear, and thank you.
I think also just one last point, this is also the first time in its history, I mean, not in its history, but the first time where ETSI has really started to adopt open source tooling in its standards work. So the use of GitLab. So GitLab, you're seeing it publicly for the purposes of commenting on the standards. It's also being used by the rapporteurs behind the scenes to develop the standards, and that is the first time. Now they're still holding on to. So for example, we have the whole issues system on GitLab. We have merge requests on GitLab. They are still holding on to their very archaic way of dealing with comments and changes to the standard, right? So even though we have all that technology available, a lot of them feel limited by the way they did things before and try to stick to it. And as a result, that technology has not been deployed internally to best effect. But in my view, they could learn a lot from the processes of the open source community, because I reckon it could really accelerate the standardization process, right? If we move from, I told you about these synchronous meetings that last all day, if we move from that to having, merge requests and, everybody comments on the merge request. If there seems to be a consensus that it's good, we approve it. If there's no consensus, we leave it for a synchronous discussion in a meeting. We could probably cut the meeting time in these discussions by half or even more. And still have an inclusive and functional way of doing things, which is how the open source community has worked for a long time. So, they have also got a lot to learn from us in process, and hopefully in the future, we'll see more adoption of our style of processes, which will result, I think, in a much more inclusive approach.
What you've just said is the persistent value proposition of open source that industry keeps on coming to open source for. Yeah. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay. If there is no other question, I would like to thank you, Jordan, for preparing the session and his commitment with the topic and all the work that he's doing. Also, thank you to all of you for participating today. And as usual, the recording will be uploaded to our channel, and we will be sharing, Jordan, if you agree, the presentation as well with everyone. So thank you very much. Have a nice rest of the day, and keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.